It was a stormy night in the small town of Ravenswood. The rain pounded on the roof of the old, abandoned asylum, a place shrouded in dark legends and ghostly tales. The asylum had been closed for decades after a series of mysterious patient deaths. Locals avoided it, believing it to be haunted by the tormented souls of those who had died there. One night, four friends, Mia, Eric, Laura, and Ben, decided to explore the asylum. They had heard the stories and wanted to see if there was any truth to them. Equipped with flashlights and a video camera, they set out for the crumbling building. As they approached the entrance, the wind howled through the broken windows, and the rusted gate creaked open as if inviting them in. Mia, the bravest of the group, led the way. "Come on, guys. It's just an old building. Nothing to be scared of." Eric followed closely behind, trying to mask his nervousness. "Yeah, let's get this over with." Laura and Ben exchanged uneasy glances but stepped inside. The air inside was thick with dust and the smell of decay. Their footsteps echoed through the empty hallways. "Look at this place," Ben said, shining his flashlight on the peeling wallpaper and rusted medical equipment. "It's like a scene from a horror movie." They ventured deeper into the asylum, passing by empty rooms and dark corridors. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the halls, making them jump. "What was that?" Laura whispered, her voice trembling. "Probably just the wind," Mia said, though she didn't sound convinced. They continued exploring, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. As they turned a corner, they came across an old operating room. The table in the center was covered in a faded, blood-stained sheet. Eric shuddered. "This place gives me the creeps. Let's get out of here." But Mia was determined to prove there was nothing to fear. "Just a little longer. We haven't seen anything yet." They moved on, eventually finding themselves in the psychiatric wing of the asylum. The walls were lined with padded cells, their doors hanging open. It was here that the stories were the darkest. Tales of patients who had gone mad, driven to insanity by something unseen. As they explored the wing, they heard a faint, rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It grew louder, echoing through the halls. "Do you hear that?" Ben asked, his voice barely above a whisper. They followed the sound to one of the cells. Inside, they found a figure sitting in the corner, rocking back and forth. It was an old man, his eyes wide with terror. "Who are you?" Mia asked, her voice shaking. The man looked up, his eyes vacant. "They never leave. They never leave." "Who never leaves?" Eric asked. "The voices," the man replied. "They whisper, they scream, they never leave." Suddenly, the door to the cell slammed shut, trapping them inside. The temperature dropped, and the air grew thick with an oppressive presence. The friends huddled together, their flashlights flickering. From the shadows, whispers began to fill the room, growing louder and more frantic. The friends covered their ears, trying to block out the noise, but it was no use. The whispers turned into screams, piercing their minds. Mia tried to open the door, but it was locked tight. "We need to get out of here." The old man continued to rock back and forth, oblivious to their presence. "They never leave." In a desperate attempt, Ben kicked the door, and it finally gave way. They stumbled out of the cell, the screams still echoing in their ears. They ran through the halls, the shadows seeming to reach out for them. They finally burst through the front doors of the asylum and into the stormy night. The rain washed over them, but they didn't stop running until they were far from the building. Breathing heavily, they looked back at the asylum, its dark silhouette looming in the distance. "Let's never do that again," Laura said, her voice shaking. They agreed, vowing never to speak of what they had seen. But the whispers and screams haunted their dreams, a constant reminder of the horrors they had encountered in the old asylum. And though they had escaped, they could never truly leave behind the darkness that had taken root in their minds. Years passed, and the friends tried to move on with their lives. But strange occurrences followed them. Mia began hearing whispers in her home, soft at first, but growing louder each night. Eric saw fleeting shadows out of the corner of his eye, always disappearing when he turned to look. Laura felt an unshakable presence watching her, sending chills down her spine. Ben's dreams were plagued with nightmares of the asylum, waking up in a cold sweat, the old man's vacant eyes haunting him. Determined to end the curse, Mia started researching the asylum's history. She discovered that the asylum's head doctor, Dr. William Crow, had conducted cruel experiments on the patients. Many had died in agony, their spirits trapped within the asylum's walls. Mia believed that the ritual Chris had read from the book had only partially worked, and the spirits were still bound to them. One evening, Mia called the group together. "We need to go back. We need to finish what we started and lay those spirits to rest." Reluctantly, they agreed. Armed with Mia's research and the old book, they returned to the asylum. The storm had subsided, but an eerie stillness hung in the air. Inside, the asylum seemed more sinister than before. The walls appeared to close in on them, and the oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on their shoulders. They retraced their steps to the psychiatric wing, where they had encountered the old man. As they entered the cell, the old man was gone, but his presence lingered. Mia opened the book and began reading the final part of the ritual. The air grew colder, and the whispers returned, louder and more frantic than ever. Suddenly, the spirits of the patients appeared around them, their faces twisted in agony. They reached out, their ghostly hands passing through the friends, filling them with an icy chill. Mia continued reading, her voice steady despite the terror surrounding them. As she finished the ritual, a bright light enveloped the room. The spirits screamed, their forms dissolving into the light. The friends shielded their eyes until the light faded and the room was silent once more. Exhausted, they made their way out of the asylum. As they stepped into the fresh air, they felt a weight lift from their shoulders. The whispers were gone, and the darkness that had plagued them for so long had finally been lifted. Breathing a sigh of relief, they looked back at the asylum one last time. It still stood, abandoned and decaying, but the sinister presence was gone. "Let's go home," Mia said, her voice filled with hope. They agreed, walking away from the asylum and leaving the horrors of Ravenswood behind them. Though they would never forget the experience, they knew they had finally laid the spirits to rest and freed themselves from the curse. Years later, the asylum remained a decaying relic, but it no longer held the same terror. The townspeople, unaware of the friends' ordeal, continued to tell ghost stories about Ravenswood Asylum. But the friends knew the truth, that the spirits had found peace, and the echoes had finally been silenced.